Imagine for a second the absolute quietest place on Earth.
Okay.
And I don't just mean quiet in terms of decibels,
Yeah.
like no traffic, no sirens.
Right.
I mean quiet in terms of the soul. You are 53 years old. You have finally managed to extract yourself from a life that was completely defined by the worst tragedy a parent can endure.
Yeah.
You're living in a chacra, which is like a traditional farmhouse deep in the rolling, verdant countryside of Uruguay. You have eucalyptus trees swaying in the wind, scenting the air. You have a rescue dog named Poco sleeping at your feet.
Sounds pretty incredible.
Right. And above you, the Milky Way looks like someone just spilled diamond dust across a piece of black velvet. It is the very definition of peace.
It sounds like paradise. But, I mean, in literature and usually in life, paradise is really just a setting waiting for a conflict.
Exactly.
It's the calm before, and the more idyllic the calm is, well, the more violent the storm usually turns out to be.
That is exactly the situation for Bree Winter. She is the protagonist of the book we are unpacking today, the psychological thriller I Came Back for You by Kate White.
And it's such a brilliant setup.
It really is. Now, Bree isn't a detective. She's not a spy. She's a book editor.
Right. She fixes other people's stories.
Yes, she is someone who fixes other people's stories, and she has moved all the way to Uruguay to try and fix her own. She's living there with a man named Sebastian Bass, who is, he's lovely, he's emotionally intelligent, and currently he's away on business.
So she's totally alone out there.
She's alone. She's feeling that primal, alone in a big house, jitteriness, and then the silence breaks.
The inciting incident.
Yeah.
The absolute disruption of the status quo.
Exactly. She sees headlights cutting through the dark, coming up the long dirt road, tires crunching on the gravel, then footsteps, a knock on the heavy wooden door. Now, Bree opens it, probably expecting a neighbor or maybe Bass coming home early. But standing there, literally thousands of miles from where he belongs, is her ex-husband, Logan Chase, a man she has not seen in 7 years.
And that knock on the door, it isn't just a visitor. It's the past coming to collect a debt.
Oh, well said.
What makes this opening so incredibly effective, and I Came Back for You, is that Kate White juxtaposes the geographic cure. The idea that we can just move to heal against the reality that trauma has no borders.
Right.
You can move your physical body to South America, but your history travels right there in your carry-on luggage.
That is the mission for this deep dive.
Yeah.
We're going to explore Kate White's novel not just as a whodunit, which, it certainly is.
And a very gripping one at that.
For sure. But also as a study in grief, the psychology of what's called the fawn response and the really complex dynamics of open marriages. We're peeling back the layers of Bree Winter's life to see how a mother survives the impossible and then, has to face it all over again.
Because the reason Logan is standing on that porch is the worst reason imaginable. He isn't there to catch up over coffee.
No.
He's there about their daughter, Melanie. Mel
was murdered 8 years ago in Cartersville, New York, while she was a college student. Just a devastating, nightmarish reality.
Unthinkable.
And for years, the narrative was basically settled. The police, the town, and Mel's parents believed the killer was a local serial predator named Calvin Ruck.
Right. Ruck was the convenient monster.
Yeah.
He was convicted of killing 2 other women in the area around the exact same time. He never actually confessed to Mel's murder specifically, and he wasn't tried for it, but the timeline fit perfectly.
Geography fit.
Exactly. It allowed everyone to categorize the tragedy. They could say, well, the monster's in a cage. We can try to move on.
Right. It's a psychological safety net. We all need to believe that bad things happen because of bad people who are eventually punished. It restores a sense of order to the universe.
But Logan is standing there to basically cut that safety net wide open. He brings news that Calvin Ruck is dying of cancer in prison. And on his deathbed, Ruck calls his lawyer to give a final confession.
He admits to the other 2 murders.
Yes, he details them. But he is adamant, stone-cold adamant, that he did not kill Melanie Chase.
This is the key takeaway right at the start of our deep dive, the total destruction of closure.
Right.
Humans crave narrative consistency.
Yeah.
When Ruck says, I didn't do it, he isn't just reopening a cold case file. He is re-victimizing the parents.
Absolutely. Because if Ruck didn't do it, the killer is still walking around.
Maybe they're still right there in Cartersville.
It turns a historical tragedy into an active, breathing threat.
Bree realizes immediately that her peace in Uruguay is just an illusion. She can't stay there. She can't leave this investigation to Logan, who we are going to talk about a lot today. because he is, well, let's just call him a chaotic variable.
Very chaotic.
Bree realizes she has to go back. She has to return to the actual site of the trauma to find out who really killed her daughter.
It's the hero's journey, but totally inverted. She's not going out into the great unknown. She's returning to the known, which is honestly far more terrifying because she knows exactly how much it hurts there.
Before we put her on that plane to New York, I want to stick a pin in the psychology of her life in Uruguay. We mentioned the geographic cure earlier.
Yeah.
Is that a real psychological concept or just something people say? Because I feel like you and I have both probably tried that on a smaller scale, right? Moving apartments to get over a bad breakup.
Oh, it's very real, though psychologists often refer to it as escapism or avoidance coping.
Okay.
The internal logic is if I change the external scenery, my internal landscape will naturally change too. And for a little while, it actually works.
Really?
Yeah, the brain gets distracted by all the novelty, the new language, the new food, the eucalyptus trees. But the neural pathways of profound grief are etched really deep.
So it's temporary.
Right. Bree thinks she's healed because she's calm, but she's really just existing in a low-stimulation environment. She's managing the symptoms, not treating the root cause.
There's a moment early in I Came Back for You where she's panicking about her rescue dog, Poco. She thinks he's been bitten by a poisonous snake, a yara.
Right, the snake scene.
It turns out to be nothing, just a tummy ache. But her reaction goes from 0 to 100 in seconds.
That right there is hypervigilance. It's a classic hallmark of PTSD.
Even in paradise.
Even in paradise, yes. She is constantly scanning the horizon for the next catastrophe. It shows us that while she moved her body to South America, her nervous system is literally still stuck in that trauma state from 8 years ago. She's just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
And Logan is that shoe.
Logan is definitely the shoe.
Let's talk about the contrast between her life in Uruguay and her past life with Logan. In Uruguay, she has Sebastian. He seems like the ultimate good guy.
Bass is so crucial to the emotional architecture of the novel. He represents the healthy present. He's Uruguayan, he's warm, he's emotionally available, he listens to her.
Yeah.
He's the complete antithesis of the chaos Bree left behind with Logan. In psychological terms, he represents secure attachment.
Whereas Logan is a mess. We learned that they divorced after Mel's death, which is sadly pretty common for grieving parents.
Right, very common, yes. The statistics on marriage survival after the loss of a child are heartbreaking.
But it wasn't just the grief that broke them. Logan cheated on Bree, and his excuse was essentially, I was sad, I needed comfort.
Which is a common, albeit incredibly destructive, reaction. People seek comfort or sensation just to numb the profound pain. But for Bree, it shattered her trust completely.
It added a whole new layer of betrayal right on top of the grief.
Exactly. So when she makes the decision to go back to Cartersville with him, she is walking into a massive emotional minefield.
So she packs her bags, she leaves Bath, this warm, granding presence, and she flies back to upstate New York to Cartersville. The plan is to attend a scholarship reception in Mel's honor, but the real reason is to investigate.
Right.
And the moment she lands, she is just bombarded by memory. It's sensory overload.
Yeah.
But Kate White uses a very specific, very unusual detail to ground that memory.
Componophobia.
The button phobia. Yes. I actually had to look this up to make sure it wasn't just made up for the book. A fear of buttons.
It is absolutely real. Steve Jobs famously suffered from it.
Really?
Yeah. It's an irrational fear of buttons, usually the plastic ones. And Mel, the daughter, suffered from this. It's such a brilliant literary device by Kate White because it makes Mel feel incredibly specific.
She isn't just a generic victim.
Exactly. She's the girl who hated buttons. It adds this really compelling texture of tenderness and difficulty to Bree's memories of raising her, because it wasn't always easy.
Right. Mel was a teenager when she died, and things were pretty strained between them.
And Bree is carrying the heavy guilt of that unresolved tension. The button phobia acts as a symbol of all those little quirks and difficulties that make up a real parent-child relationship.
Bree checks in at the Cartersville Arms, and she immediately starts digging through the things Mel left behind. She's looking for anything the police might have somehow missed. And because Mel was a poet, Bree is reading her poetry. She's looking for clues hidden in the stanzas.
Poetry really becomes the code here. Bree finds a specific haiku, standard 5-7-5 structure, and it ends with the line, returning to Birch.
Now, Bree is a book editor. She deals in words for a living. So she reads, returning to Birch, and naturally thinks, okay, Robert Frost. Nature, the woods, the college campus is full of trees. She assumes Mel is talking about finding solace out in the forest.
It's a classic cognitive bias. We interpret ambiguity based on our own current context and assumptions. Bree sees trees around her, so she reads birch as a literal tree.
But in a mystery, ambiguity is almost always a signpost pointing in the completely wrong direction.
Always. We will definitely circle back to the birch trees, because that is a massive clue. But first, we really have to talk about the investigation team.
Oh boy.
There.
The team. So it's Bree, it's Logan, and Logan's +1.
This dynamic is just excruciating to read. Logan brings his current girlfriend, Lisa, to the town where his daughter was murdered to help solve the murder.
It's wild.
It's tone-deaf on a level that borders on pathological. It shows Logan's complete and utter lack of self-awareness.
Bree's obviously annoyed. I mean, who wouldn't be? But she doesn't scream at him. She doesn't throw her suitcase at his head. She tries to remain civil. She swallows her anger. And this brings up a concept from I Came Back for You that I think is honestly one of the most valuable takeaways for you listening right now, the fawn response.
Yes. This is a vital piece of human psychology. Most people know fight or flight.
Right.
Some people know freeze. But fawn is the fourth F, and it's often the most misunderstood of the bunch.
What exactly is it?
Fawning is a trauma response where a person deals with the threat by essentially becoming appealing to the threat. You merge with the aggressor. You over-apologize. You flatter. You comply. You do whatever it takes to de-escalate.
Bree realizes she did exactly this 8 years ago with the local police. She just nodded along. She didn't ask the hard questions because she didn't want to be perceived as difficult.
Right. She didn't want to upset the detectives who were, quote-unquote, trying to help.
It's so relatable.
It's deeply rooted in our mammalian attachment system. If you realize you can't fight the predator and you can't outrun them, you try to signal, I'm not a threat. I am useful to you. Please don't hurt me.
Wow.
Children do this with abusive parents all the time as a survival mechanism. But it also happens with authority figures like the police.
So Bree realizes that her good behavior, her fawning, might have literally cost her the truth 8 years ago.
Exactly. She accepted the Calvin Ruck theory back then because it was the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
It pleased the authorities. So this time around, she makes a firm vow. No more fawning.
That is such a powerful realization for her. Like, I was so busy being polite that I missed the truth about my own daughter.
Yeah.
But it's hard to hold that boundary when Logan is involved. He eventually sends Lisa home, realizing she's a distraction, which, frankly, took him way too long to figure out.
Way too long.
And suddenly, it's just Bree and Logan again, the parents.
Yeah.
And there's a real gravitation there.
It's trauma bonding at its core. They are the only two people on the face of the earth who understand the specific weight of this exact loss.
Right.
And that creates a very potent, false sense of intimacy. They slip right back into the familiar roles of husband and wife, even though those roles have been legally and emotionally dissolved for years. They're just partners in pain.
They start interviewing suspects together. They're playing amateur detective. And the first name on their list is Jack, Mel's college boyfriend. The classic spurned lover.
Statistically speaking, it's usually the boyfriend or the husband. It's always the first place investigators look.
But they find out something really interesting from a friend of Mel's named Harry. The story, the campus legend, really was always that Jack was heartbroken because Mel died.
Right.
But Harry says no, Jack was heartbroken because Mel dumped him.
This flips the power dynamic entirely. If Jack was the rejecter who then lost her, he's just grieving. But if he was the rejected, he's humiliated.
And humiliation is dangerous.
Humiliation is an incredibly potent fuel for violence, specifically in cases of domestic or partner violence. The mindset becomes, if I can't have you, no one can. It transforms him instantly from a tragic victim into a prime suspect with a very clear motive.
So Bree tracks Jack down. He's waiting tables in town, still trying to make it as an actor. He hasn't really moved on either. He's charming, but a little slippery, you know.
Yeah.
But just as we're starting to think, okay, it's definitely the boyfriend, case closed, Kate White throws a curveball and the cat came back for you. That completely changes the game. Enter Riley Reynolds.
This is the massive procedural pivot in the book. Riley Reynolds is a former student who comes forward right now while Bree is in town.
Convenient timing.
Very. She contacts Bree and just drops a total bombshell. She claims that she was raped by Calvin Ruck, the serial killer everyone originally blamed 2 days after Mel died, in a nearby park.
Let's pause and look at the implications of this. If Riley's story is true, it places the monster Ruck right at the scene of the crime within 48 hours of Mel's death.
It completely validates the original theory.
It means Ruck was lying on his deathbed just to be cool, and Bree can pack her bags and go back to Uruguay.
And the thing is, Bree really wants to believe it. This is confirmation bias 101. The human brain actively seeks out information that reduces anxiety.
Right.
If Riley is telling the truth, the anxiety is gone, the monster is already dead, justice has technically been served, sort of.
But Bree forces her professional editor brain to take over. She is used to checking facts in manuscripts all day long. She knows she needs to verify the story.
She can't just fawn again and accept it.
Exactly. So Riley claims that after the attack, she escaped Ruck by jumping into a raging creek and floating downstream to safety. It's very cinematic.
A little too cinematic. Sounds like a bad movie script.
So Bree does something I absolutely loved reading. She doesn't go looking for fingerprints. She doesn't interrogate people in dark, rainy alleys. She goes to a weather history website.
This is modern sleuthing at its finest. It's not magnifying glasses anymore. It's data archives. It's verifiable, objective truth.
She looks up the precipitation data for Cartersville for that specific week, 8 years ago. And what does the data actually say?
0 precipitation. It hadn't rained a drop in weeks. That particular creek relies entirely on runoff. It would have been bone dry, maybe ankle-deep, stagnant water at best.
Wow.
You couldn't float a paper boat down it, let alone a human woman desperately escaping a predator.
The creek was dry. That realization is just the floor dropping out from under the investigation. Riley is lying.
And this opens a terrifying new door. Because if Riley is lying about a traumatic assault by a known serial killer, why?
Right, why make that up?
Is it false memory syndrome? Bree actually knows quite a bit about this because she edited a book on it in her past. Or is it just a desperate need for attention? Or, far more sinisterly, is she a false witness?
A false witness intentionally planted to cement the old narrative.
Exactly. If someone knew Bree was back in town poking around asking questions, they might have sent Riley to tell this exact story. To say, look, Ruck did it. Stop looking. Go back to Uruguay.
It completely shifts the genre of the book, right? From a simple murder mystery to a full-blown conspiracy. Someone is pulling the strings to keep the truth buried.
And this realization leads Bree to look away from the student body and start looking toward the faculty, the adults in the room, specifically the handlers, Jeffrey and Allison Handler.
The intellectual power couple.
Yeah.
Jeffrey is this charismatic poetry professor. He was Mel's mentor. And Allison is his artist wife. They are sophisticated, alluring, and they hold a huge amount of sway on the campus. They represent that academic elite that can be really intimidating to outsiders.
And Bree starts to heavily suspect that Mel might have been having an affair with Jeffrey. It's the classic cliche, right?
Yeah.
The young, impressionable student poet and the older, wise, slightly brooding professor. We've seen that story 1,000 times.
It's the expected trope.
Yeah.
But Kate White subverts it beautifully in him. I came back for you. Bree investigates them. She even goes to their house at night and peers through the windows.
She's crossing major lines now. She's not just a grieving mother anymore. She's a trespasser.
Right. But when she finally confronts Allison, the wife, expecting to find a scorned woman who maybe lashed out, Allison drops an absolute bomb. Mel wasn't sleeping with Jeffrey. Mel was sleeping with Allison.
As a total jaw-dropper. The affair wasn't with the husband. It was with the wife.
It completely recontextualizes the clues. Remember the haiku? Returning to Birch?
Yes. The Handlers live on Birch Street.
Mel wasn't writing about nature at all. She was writing about a location, a destination of desire. Returning to Birch Street, she was writing about sneaking off to her lover's home.
And the Handlers had an open marriage. Now, we often hear about ethical non-monogamy in the real world, but in fiction, it always seems to go horribly wrong. Why do you think that is?
That's a great question. Why is it always the open marriage that leads to murder in these thrillers?
Because the rules in open relationships are basically stress tests for human insecurity.
Right.
The Handlers had a very strict rule in their arrangement. No students and no overlap of lovers. By sleeping with Mel, Allison completely broke the contract.
She broke the rules.
It introduces a deep betrayal into the marriage, not because of the sex itself, but because of the deceit. Allison broke the rules with a student who was also her husband's academic mentee. It is incredibly messy.
So now we have a motive that is messy and highly heated. But while Bree is busy unraveling this academic drama, the physical danger in the present day really ramps up. She realizes she needs to confront Riley Reynolds about the dry creek. She needs to look her in the eye and ask, who told you to lie to me?
She tracks Riley down to a lawyer's house where she's currently staying. Bree is totally ready for a major confrontation.
But she's too late. She arrives at the house and she finds Riley. But Riley is dead, murdered.
This is the ultimate escalation point. This is absolutely not a cold case anymore. Someone is cleaning up their loose ends in real time.
Yeah.
Riley became a liability. She messed up the lie. The creek detail was a fatal flaw, and whoever is orchestrating this behind the scenes decided she had to go.
The police swoop in. They eventually arrest a woman named Morgan Kroll. She's an associate of Riley's, and she's connected to the handlers. It turns out Riley was likely paid or coerced into giving that false testimony just to keep the heat off the real culprit. The whole false witness scheme just completely unravels.
It confirms Bree's absolute worst fears. Mel's death wasn't a random act by a passing serial killer. It was part of a toxic web involving the very people she looked up to and trusted.
Amidst all this intense chaos, dead bodies, lies, these huge revelations, Bree's emotional defenses completely collapse. She's alone in a hotel room with Logan. The adrenaline is incredibly high, the grief is deep, they're both terrified, and they sleep together.
We really need to unpack this moment because a lot of listeners might be screaming at the book, don't do it, he's toxic.
Right, I was definitely screaming that.
But psychologically speaking, it makes perfect sense in that exact moment. It's often referred to clinically as grief sex or regression.
Regression, like comfort food for the soul.
In a way, yes, it's a desperate, primal attempt to access the past. When Bree is physically with Logan, just for a few minutes, she can pretend that the last 8 miserable years didn't happen.
Oh, wow.
It's a massive dopamine hit of familiarity in a world that has suddenly become terrifyingly unfamiliar and dangerous. It's an unconscious attempt to reconstruct the family unit that was destroyed.
But the postcoital clarity is just brutal. Logan, being typical Logan, misinterprets the entire thing completely. He starts talking about getting back together. He actually says, I want my old life back.
Which is the one thing he can never, ever have. The old life includes a living daughter. Logan is literally chasing a ghost.
Yeah.
Bree, however, instantly realizes the magnitude of the mistake. She thinks of Bas. She thinks of the eucalyptus trees in Uruguay. She realizes that sleeping with Logan wasn't a new beginning. It was an ending. It was a severe lapse in judgment. She feels like she's taken a match and torched her safe sanctuary.
And then, the universe decides to twist the knife even further. Lisa, the current girlfriend that Logan sent home earlier, calls Bree. And she is definitely not happy about being sent away like a child.
The Lisa twist. This is the moment that truly solidifies Logan's real character.
Lisa tells Bree, you think Logan cheated on you because of his profound grief over Mel. Honey, Logan and I were hooking up 11 years ago.
Long before Mel died.
That one sentence changes everything about Bree's internal narrative of her own marriage. She had spent years telling herself he's a good man who just broke under the unimaginable pressure of tragedy.
But the reality is he was a narcissist who was living a double life. He was a serial cheater.
Yeah.
It's incredibly painful to hear, but it's actually a massive gift for Bree. It liberates her. She was carrying all this misplaced guilt, thinking maybe if I had been more supportive after Mel died, our marriage would have survived. Now she knows the truth. The marriage was dead long before Mel was. Logan is a complete fraud.
The mystery of the murder is effectively solved at this point. It traces back to the toxicity of the handler circle and the elaborate cover-up. But the mystery of Bree's own future is what's left hanging. She has solved the cold case, but she has seriously jeopardized her own future. She flies back to Uruguay.
The return. But she is absolutely not the same woman who left.
No?
She's no longer fawning. She has faced the monster, both the literal killer and the emotional monster of her ex-husband.
She goes back to the chakra. Boss is there waiting for her. And she is terrified. She thinks he's going to leave her because she cheated with Logan. She confesses everything right away. She tells him about the sex, the chaotic emotions, the whole mess. She doesn't try to hide a single detail.
And this right here is where Boss completely cements his status as the anti-Logan. He is the ultimate secure attachment figure.
He really is.
He doesn't scream at her. He doesn't try to shame her. He doesn't make the betrayal all about his own ego. Instead, he asks one incredibly grounded question. Is this working for you? Us, this place.
That is such a profound, mature response.
It puts all the agency directly back in her hands. He is essentially saying, I can forgive the physical act of regression, but only if your true intent is to actually be here with me. He demands emotional presence. He demands that she stop hiding in Uruguay and start actively living in Uruguay.
Bree chooses living. She chooses Boss. She finally manages to integrate the horrible loss of Mel into her life. Instead of letting it dictate her geography and her fears, she realizes she isn't there to escape anymore. She's there to build something real.
And the book ends with this moment of grace that I personally think is more powerful than the actual solution to the murder mystery. It circles back to the poetry.
Yes. Bree decides to self-publish a collection of Mel's poems as a tribute to her life. And Logan, who's finally been humble, perhaps for the very first time in his life, calls her with one final piece of information. He mentions a specific poem Mel wrote about the Song in the Pines.
Mel wrote these beautiful lines, "The song in the pines stays with me always, always without you knowing."
Right.
Bree had always wondered about the you in that poem. Was it a secret lover? Was it the professor?
Logan tells her that Mel actually wrote that about their childhood summer trips on Cape Cod. The you in the poem is Bree.
Without you knowing, it's like a message sent across the divide of death. Despite all the intense teenage rebellion, despite the bizarre button phobia and the slammed bedroom doors, Mel carried her mother's deep love with her. She heard the song in the pines.
It honestly gives me chills just thinking about it. It's the ultimate validation that every parent of a difficult teenager craves. So, if we look at I Came Back for You by Kate White as a whole, looking beyond all the brilliant plot twists, what is the core nugget of wisdom you want people to take away from this deep dive?
I think it's really about the fundamental difference between closure and integration.
Okay, say more about that.
Well, the legal system eventually gave a messy sort of closure. There were arrests, there were deaths. But that didn't heal Bree's soul. What finally healed her was the art. The poetry provided the emotional answer that the police work never could.
That is a really powerful thought to leave on. We look to the law for justice, but maybe we have to look to art for the actual truth.
Precisely. And we have to stop fawning. We have to start facing the things that terrify us, whether that's a literal killer hiding in the past or just a toxic ex-husband who won't let go.
Well, that was a heavy deep dive, but a really necessary one. If you want to experience the full tension of those dry creeks and birch trees for yourself, definitely pick up Shipping. I Came Back for You by Kate White. It is a true masterclass in suspense.
And in psychology.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll see you on the next one.